Well, hello everyone. I'm Jill Bloom, group publisher of Walls and Ceilings and Roofing Contractor. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're here with us online or LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, we appreciate you joining us. I'm here today virtually with Rick D'Amato, my editorial director, and Trent Cotney, who's the CEO of Cotney Construction. And there's been a lot happening since we talked last time. But Trent, can you give us an update on the stimulus package? And are there any speed bumps that contractors have been coming across with all the details?
Sure. So the CARES Act, which is the stimulus package, was passed, I believe, Friday. And over the weekend and yesterday, there has been a lot of discussion over the ability to apply for these SBA loans that everybody's talking about. So the stimulus package includes a lot of different things in it. If you're looking at it, and I've got some cheat sheets here because there's so much involved, but the key thing from an SBA standpoint is that it offers businesses access to these loans, and they have the capability of either getting 10 million or 2.5 times their monthly payroll annually, okay, whichever is less. So it gives them the capability to get some additional capital. Now, originally in the House, they had suggested that this was going to be 0% interest, and then the Senate got a hold of it. They adjusted it, and now it's 4%. So it's up to 4% interest on it. Here's the key thing, and here's the thing that that contractors really need to pay attention to, and that is the forgiveness portion of it. So the rules are they're somewhat easy to understand on paper, but the actual application of them remains to be seen. So the Paycheck Protection Program, which is part of this CARES Act, it allows you to pay for the following, four categories, okay? So this loan can be used for 4 categories. You can't go buy a new car with it, you can't buy a boat, nothing like that. So payroll costs, okay? The key thing here is in creating the stimulus package, the government was concerned about people getting laid off and the ability to make payroll, okay? The second is healthcare costs. Okay, so we all have ongoing insurance costs that we have to pay as business owners. It allows you to pay for that. The third is mortgage payments, rent payments, and utilities. Okay, all essential payables. If you're looking at your AP right now to try to figure out who to pay, it's mortgage payment, rent payment, utilities, and lawyers. I thought I'd throw that in. The last category, the fourth category, is other accounts payable accrued prior to February 15th of the year, okay? So those are the 4 categories where you can spend this money. Now, here's what's interesting, the conditions on loan forgiveness, okay? The amount of the loan forgiveness depends, okay? What they're gonna do is they're gonna look at a time period from February 15th to June 30th. And they're going to see whether or not the amount of employees that you have decrease or your payroll decreases during that time period. The loan forgiveness amount will be reduced if employee pay is cut by more than 25% from the previous quarter. So what they're doing is they're trying to compare apples to apples. They're trying to incentivize people to retain employees or to bring on more employees back into the fold. So this is not a gimme by any means, okay? It's debt, and contractors need to recognize that. It's debt, it's cheap debt, but it's still debt. And I've had a lot of calls from contractors who have asked me, they said, Trent, I got a credit line. This credit line is great, it's already less than 4%. And I don't have to pay principal on it, I just pay interest. And yeah, I get that, but what's unique about this is if you read it, there's some very interesting things in here that are a little bit different than a credit line. So the maximum maturity on this loan is, if I read this correctly, is 10 years. So you have the capability of kind of pushing this out a little bit. With a credit line, it depends, and there's a lot of requirements to ensure that your credit line remains active. There's also a lot of personal guarantees on a credit line, which this SBA loan may not have. So here's the thing that's confusing to a lot of contractors is if you go to SBA.gov right now, at least as of an hour ago, because this stuff is constantly updating, there is an application for an SBA loan, but it is not the application for this particular CARES Act loan. I had a lot of confusion about that. It's a disaster relief loan. Okay, so it's still a loan, still good stuff, still something you can apply for, but it's not the specialized one that we're dealing with here. What we've done is we've prepared a cheat sheet on the CARES Act. It's on our website at cotneycl.com. It goes through all the stuff, not just the stuff I just talked about, but it also talks about the employee benefits and the kind of stuff that you can expect from that.
Awesome.
Trent,
Yeah.
let me just ask you if you would, for some of the our followers right now that might not have seen it, you've listed 3 key things that are items of concerns for contractors that have been coming to you in your offices around the country. Could you kind of go over those again and tell us how those have developed over the last 30 days?
Sure. So the biggest concern that we have gotten calls on, and when I say I'm working around the clock, I am working around the clock. I mean, that is, you know, I have, in the last 3 weeks, I think I have consumed more coffee per capita than any other human being. So what happens is these jurisdictions, states, and you know, local areas will issue orders, and these orders will be shelter in place or stay at home or something along those lines. And they will provide guidance as to what businesses are essential and can continue to operate and can't. Okay, the issue here is that the guidance isn't very good. Okay, a lot of these orders are drafted by non-lawyers, not that lawyers do anything better, but they just don't make a lot of sense. So there's a lot of interpretation there. Most of the essential business orders that are out there, they kind of kick off and they say, hey, go to your Department of Homeland Security guidelines. You know, federally, you can kind of look at that as guidance. What I am telling contractors out there is I'm saying, look, it clearly delineates certain contractors. There's catch-alls for critical infrastructure. There's some ambiguity there, okay? There is. But right now, construction, generally speaking, I would consider to be an essential business, especially if it involves, you know, critical infrastructure. If you're working on a hospital, if you're working on healthcare facility, if you're doing, you know, roads, you know, bridges, things like that that are absolutely required. Yes, when you get into commercial and residential, I would argue the same thing, okay? There are certain states and jurisdictions that have taken the opposite approach, and that would be Pennsylvania. Washington has a pretty hardline approach. New York City has taken an approach and further defined construction services. And we're starting to see a lot of pushback in Miami-Dade as well. So that would be the first one. The second one I would say would be contractual, and that's primarily suspensions on projects. Okay, suspensions on projects have been really problematic for contractors because what will happen, and these are primarily on commercial jobs, although I'm seeing it on residential as well. You've allocated a certain amount of crew and equipment to jobs, and then all of a sudden you can't do work. And if you can't do work, you're not getting money. If you're not getting money, you're not making payroll. So the issue that I'm seeing out there is contractors not understanding the importance of making sure that they are timely submitting claims, that they are following the lien and bond laws for whatever state that they're in, that they are getting to the front of the pack and not waiting until after all this is done, okay? Every day that passes is a day less that their customer has money in the bank, okay? So the goal is get in front, get paid now. A lot of contractors are like, Trent, what are you talking about, man? I got more work than I can handle. My phone's ringing off the hook. That's, you know, fantastic. The problem is not production. The problem is getting paid on production, okay? The third issue is navigating these HR issues, okay? The Family First Coronavirus Response Act, it goes into effect tomorrow. It is complicated. Again, we have guidelines on our website that kind of go through it all. We've written articles. We've done everything, you know, that we can to put it out there. But if I have to give advice to contractors, I would say, the way that the act is written, it provides additional paid time off that you are required to pay if it kicks into certain circumstances. Some of those circumstances are if you are caring for a loved one that's got coronavirus or you've got kids at home, okay? And there's different amounts that you have to pay. There's also extended sick leave or paid time off, okay? And if you end up in this situation, there's also retaliation provisions in that act. So if I'm a contractor, today is March 31st, I'm making some decisions today about what the future holds because the act goes into effect tomorrow and applies to all employees as of the date of April 1st, okay? So that's a very difficult decision to make, but that's something that contractors should consider. I would say those are probably the 3 biggest things.
Thanks. And where's the next gotcha? You tell us about any emerging items of concern for contractors.
For me, I think it's going to be that number 2 point, but carried out further. I think what you're going to start seeing is slow pay and no pay. And we've already started seeing that for those contractors that are doing sub work. Okay. So if you are a subcontractor on a job and you haven't experienced slow pay from general contractors, you're going to, because it's going to happen. And again, it doesn't matter how much production you have. It doesn't matter how busy your workers are. It's, can you get paid for that? So understanding and navigating the claims process contractually, understanding and navigating your lien process, the pressure points for getting payment, there's going to be an avalanche of those coming, I would say, within the next 30 to 60.
I have to agree with you that cash is definitely king. And in light of several years, a decade almost, of really robust turn and burn, there's always been what had the appearance of being plenty of cash, when the reality is, when the rotating device stops spinning, then you really know what cash is. Give our contractors some advice on some of those ways that they can proactively get in front of the cash question and making sure they're going to get paid first.
Sure. So contractors, there's a lot of contractors that go out there, and you need to understand your process. You need to truly understand the difference between gross profit and net profit and cash flow. If you're not good at that stuff, hire somebody that is. Okay, I'm not a math guy. I'll be honest with you. So I hire really bright people like John Kinney, our CEO, to make sure that I've got all my math right. So the other thing is contractors have a tendency to be a bank. Okay, pay upon completion, horrible terms. We live in a different world. If you are afraid to ask for money up front, you're missing out. Especially residential. If you're doing residential work, I'd be like, times have changed. We need to change these payment terms. Look at your payment terms front as much as you can up front. Have them pay for all material costs. Don't be floating cost. Okay, only float labor to the extent that you have to. So we live in a different world, a different environment, and I think those pressure points need to be exerted regardless of whether you're a subcontractor or contracting directly with the customer. Prime contractors are in a very difficult position because they got to get projects done and hit certain milestones so they get paid. So the subs may have more leverage now, even though it doesn't feel like that. Okay, so you have to kind of understand the lay of the land, be able to work with your vendors, contact your suppliers, your manufacturers, have honest discussions with them, figure out, what does this look like right now? We're good. What can you do for me? What can you not do? Having those honest discussions with especially your larger vendors is a good thing. I mean, you should be doing that anyway, but now more than ever.
I was going to ask you about vendors in the supply chain for contractors. I'm sure they're going to be taking a look at credit lines, just like the banks and everybody else will when things get like this. What are just a couple of other points when you sit down with your key vendors or with your banker, and obviously you've already suggested that they do, what are just a couple of bullet points of things you need to make sure you speak to about them before you walk out the door?
So one of the things, if you're having conversations with your vendors or banks or anything like that, the one thing that I always want to know is terms, okay? Because, I don't know when this thing is going to stop. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, but if I was, I would say probably June at this point, maybe longer. And then even then, there's going to be a recovery period. So you may be looking at a really, really bad 2020. What I want, as a business owner, what I want is terms. I want, if this was pay 30, I want pay 60. Let me split up the payments. Let me figure out it so I can conserve more cash. How do I conserve more cash? That's what I want to do. Okay. And I'll work with you and I'll figure out ways to pay you, but you got to work with me. And that's the key thing is you got to really think about, one of the biggest mistakes contractors make is there's two types. Okay. There is the overreactor, which starts firing everybody, cutting essential services, eliminating marketing, anything that's critical for their business infrastructure. And then there are the people with the head in the sand that don't do anything until it's too late. You want to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, so there are certain things you can cut, you can scale back, but if you scale back too much, then you don't have the production capacity to continue to generate income, which is what has to happen. So if I am a contractor, the one thing I want to think about is I really want to look at all my payables. I want to look at operations. I want to figure out, okay, who are the essential people I need in order to continue doing business? You know, here at our company, we've got 93 employees, and I've had several equivalents of State of the Unions where I've kind of said, hey, here's what's going on. And one of the things I said to everybody, I said, look, you know, now's the time to shine. You know, you have to ask yourself, are you essential? Are you essential for this business? That's what everybody needs to ask themselves. And I think that's the same kind of analysis that a contractor should do. Who, you know, come up with triage list. You know, what core do you want if this keeps going for the next year and a half? Who is the core that's going to take you out of this? Okay, and then kind of work backwards so that you have a plan in place. Crisis management is key.
The clock's telling me it's getting time to bring it to a close, but I did want to ask you one more thing. I wanted to ask, last year, Cotney Construction Law launched a subscription service for contractors. And in fact, it was in the Roofing Contractor Editor's Choice last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to find out how the COVID-19 crisis has impacted that program.
We have been very blessed, and we've been selling a lot of subscriptions. And I think the reason is one, it's very cost effective. Average savings is 53% over billable hours. Two is our subscribers get special treatment. I mean, obviously all our clients we treat special, but what I'm saying is that if there is value add that we can do, if we can provide them with checklists, outlines, documents, plan, you know, job site protection plans, toolbox talks, anything that we can do along those lines, we're providing to our subscribers. And here's the key thing is now more than ever, contractors need an attorney on demand. Okay, this is a crisis situation. If we get calls in from our subscribers, our customer service group makes sure that our attorneys are on those calls, and that's the key thing. So we've been blessed. It's been a great way to help contractors through their time of need.
Thanks, Trent. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and our viewers. Jill?
Yes, thank you so much, Trent. We truly are grateful for your time. We know how busy you are. And I know you're working around the clock because I've been emailing you at some point at like 11:30.
Right.
So we appreciate all you're doing for contractors all over. And again, thank you so much for your time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, Jill Bloom, bloomj.bnpmedia.com. And Trent, if anybody needs to reach you, what's the best way?
They can email me direct at tcotney, Cotney, at cotneycl.com, or feel free to go to our website at www.cotneycl.com.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and everybody stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Bye.